We all know there are a million different ways to make a living, but on this show, we are curious about those businesses that you might not know about. We're going to take a deep dive every week and talk to a successful person in their field to learn about how they got their start and how they continue to make it in their space. Join me and learn more about the business of. Welcome back to the business of media, and here we are talking with Jon Klein of Hang. But you've had a pretty storied career at a lot of different big names in the media world. Can you walk us through a little bit how you got to where you are now?
I got very lucky.
Okay.
Because I think luck is, accounts for 80-90% of what happens to anybody, because you meet an awful lot of really smart, talented people who just maybe never had the break or knew the right person to open the door. And, I've always just managed to benefit from those kind of opportunities, and then you seize them, and then you work your butt off, and the rest you have to hope that the pieces fall. So yeah, I've sort of gone back and forth between traditional media companies. I oversaw 60 Minutes as executive vice president of CBS News.
Favorites.
It's the best. They're the best. I just had to make sure they didn't run out of money.
I've been watching it since I was a very small child.
And it keeps getting better and better.
Yeah.
I mean, we thought at the time, because this was a while ago, 25 plus years ago, we thought, well, once Mike Wallace and Morley Safer and Ed Bradley are gone, it's going to fall apart. But in fact, I think the ratings are higher than they were then, and the show, I think, is outstanding. I mean, they just do really great work. And I had very little to do with any of that. So I just made sure that they could keep going. But I was also president of CNN US, and got to do a lot of really fun things there. But in between, I've had a series of startups. So I had a production company back in the 90s that did the first reality television on any network. We did a series of films that had no actors and no scripts, and they aired as the Tuesday night movie. And we got 20 million viewers, and
How did you come up with that concept
Well,
before it was a thing?
Yeah, I was a producer at 48 Hours, the show, which is still on.
Yeah.
And what I saw, any kind of innovation, I think, requires both knowledge and stupidity. So you have to kind of know your area pretty well, enough to understand what could be better and how to make it better, maybe. And you have to be stupid enough not to be aware of all the ways that could go wrong. And
I think that's very true.
They call it beginner's mind in Zen. Like you just have to approach things as if it's just gonna all be great. And of course, as a startup entrepreneur, be ready for all the things that are gonna go wrong. Because I always like to say, when you launch a startup, you are literally asking for trouble, because all it is solving problems. This network's a startup, and you can do great content and have great conversations, and then there are 30 other things you have to do in order to make sure anybody sees it.
Yep.
And it's the same way with anything else. And so as I was producing short 6-minute long stories for 48 Hours, it occurred to me, what we were doing was looking for provocative characters who were going through some crisis in their life and would let us in to observe it and illustrate some facet of life that we thought was interesting. Well, I got to thinking one day while we were outside doing the boring job of taking beauty shots to go with our footage. I was just thinking, if you found the right character going through the right kind of crisis, there's really no limit to how long the story could run. And if you planned it out the right way, you really could probably film a 2-hour movie with the real life characters and the plot unfolding before your eyes. And that was the name of the series, Before Your Eyes. And I took that to the CEO of CBS at the time, Howard Stringer, who went on to run Sony, and he used to make documentaries back in the day. And so he appreciated it, and he said, well, try one. And the one that we tried got 20 million viewers, and they called me the next morning and said, how many of these could you do? And we started doing a whole bunch more. So I got into the news business in order to make money while I wrote screenplays. I wanted to be a screenwriter.
Okay.
And I, wrote a lot of them. I sold a bunch of them. Very few of them got made. Only one got made with my name on it. But I had that storytelling sensibility anyway that I could impart to these real life events. And so I just sort of applied that to what was unfolding in front of the cameras, and we had that. So that I did that. That was my very first startup, and then I sold a pilot idea for a reality series to the UPN network. If anybody remembers that, it was ages ago. Doesn't exist anymore. But then I got offered this job as executive vice president of CBS News, and that just felt like a big challenge, and it would be really interesting. I would learn a lot, so I did that. But following CBS, I left CBS at the height of the first internet bubble. We didn't realize it was a bubble at the time.
We did not.
We thought maybe it was, but let's hope it's not. And so I launched a company that was one of the first streaming video platforms. This was in 1998.
Yeah.
So, at the time, video...
So people were still dialing into internet to watch streaming video? Yes.
And there was no video. I mean, if you managed to get a piece of video on your computer, it was postage stamp size, and it was always buffering and interrupting and everything.
Yep.
The only thing I knew about technology was Moore's Law that said, every 18 months the processing power is going to double. So I figured, look, if I do a startup now that delivers streaming video to your computer, by the time we get up and running 2-3 years from now, the video quality is going to be a lot better. So, if you want to land a rocket on the moon, you don't aim for where the moon is right now, you aim for where it's going to be. And that's what we did. And we raised a lot of money, because in those days it was pretty easy to raise a lot of money for a startup. And it was basically YouTube.
Yeah, I mean...
Only 6 years
before
YouTube, meaning it was 6 years too early. Timing is really important.
Timing is very
in startups.
important, yes.
Got to get that right. So, but we had a lot of fun. We created a lot of really cool things like pre-rolled video ads for the first time. And we created the first ever over-the-top TV, which is now all TV. Disney Plus is an example of over-the-top, right? Streaming. And we created in 2004 March Madness Online, which is still going for CBS. We went to CBS Sports, my friend Sean McManus, who still runs CBS Sports to this day. And I just said, look, in the first rounds of the NCAA March Madness Tournament, you've got 32 games. They're airing in groups of 4 simultaneous games. And CBS can only air one game at a time on its linear service. So why don't we put the others online and charge people to watch whichever of the 4 games they want? And he said no for 4 years straight. And then finally the 5th year, he said, okay, let's try it. And we had about 10,000 people buy tickets for like $10 a piece to watch this online. It's now a $100 million annual business for CBS. Wow. So, looking around corners is important if you're an entrepreneur. You want to be thinking, the saying is like skate to where the puck is going to be. That's what Wayne Gretzky always said. So like go be there where the business is going to be. Yeah. And that's what, you want to do. So out of that, I got hired to run CNN. And CNN's challenge was they were losing to Fox regularly at that point. This was 2004. They had not beaten Fox in 5-6 years, and they didn't know what to do. And I thought, I got there and I found a group of amazingly committed journalists who were really talented and just wanted to cover the news. And I thought, wow, if we could empower them to do that better using technology, we would have a hit on our hands. Right. And that's what we did. So we introduced the magic touchscreen wall that John King uses on election night. We did the first ever Facebook live stream. It was Obama's inauguration in 2009 because we wanted to access all those people who were on Facebook who were not watching TV. And we thought, well, so let's bring the TV to them. So we did that. That was their first live stream, which was great. We introduced Twitter to the world because I saw it as an amazing news wire.
Yeah.
You know, it was better
Especially
than...
back then, it was very much more news friendly.
This is happening, this is happening, this is happening.
In real time.
Yeah, and they kept beating the wire services in terms of breaking stories. And so we just started integrating them first behind the scenes, but then also on the air to showcase who was saying what on Twitter. Yeah. Did that for 6 years, and in the course of that, we doubled the profit at CNN. We beat Fox for the first time and last time. They haven't beaten them since. And then I left in 2010, and I started a social media platform called Tap, which showcased personalities and their fan following, and we got that profitable, which, as you know, is not always so easy in a startup, but we did that. And then I left when we got that profitable, and I ran an AI company for media that Apple acquired a couple of years ago. And looking around for the next thing, middle of COVID, couldn't go to sports in the stadium, missed watching events with my friends, streaming. Hang is the place where you go to watch games on TV alongside famous athletes and celebrities. And that's how we got there.
Wow.
Sorry that took so long.
No, I mean...
But I'm old, so it, you know, you ask and it's going to take a while.
I mean, it's amazing what you have been able to accomplish and all the innovation that you've been able to drive in the media landscape.
You have to. I mean, we're all living through the most profound period of change ever, right now, right this second. But even the last couple of decades have witnessed more change than has occurred in the entire world in its history up until now. So, you know, I mean, just think about how 3 years ago, TikTok was in its infancy. It's now the biggest media company on earth, right? Fortnite was barely out of the cradle, right? Things happen fast now, and with 5G coming, the change is going to be faster and more profound, more thoroughgoing in our lives in every way. And so if you're not oriented around innovating, you're going to be run over. You know, the tsunami will crash over you, you'll be washed away, and no one will know where you are. So you got to do it. Yeah.
Going back to March Madness Online, whose idea was the innovation for the boss button?
That's funny. That's, you know, who knows?
Because that is genius.
Who knows?
And if you guys don't know, if you watch the March Madness on CBS Online, there's a button that says boss, and if you're maybe pre-COVID, you were watching this in your office at your computer, and your boss is coming to your cubicle. It pulls up an Excel spreadsheet that's pre-filled out, so it looks like you're busy and not watching the games.
Yeah, it's a lifesaver or a career saver.
Yeah, it's genius.
But you know, the thing is, like, when you put out there something like a March Madness Online, now there are swarms of developers and product people who then can take it and iterate and make it even better and take it places you had never dreamed of. And that's part of the fun of it, to see the ripples spread out, you know, and to watch products morph. The danger is when a product just remains static, because the audience moves past you much faster. You've got to fall out of love with what you're doing almost as fast as you fell in love with it. And it's hard to do that, because it's hard enough just to put the product out every day, you know, but you've got to, not only yourself, but you've got to galvanize your organization around that idea. That what we were doing, I always like to say to my team at Hang, you know, 6 months from now, we want to look back and think we were so dumb. I can't believe we were doing X, Y, or Z thing. That's the goal. Keep getting smarter. Keep learning from every event that you do. We're going to do the NCAA, the March Madness Finals on April 4th, and, you know, with Bill Walton and a bunch of current players.
Oh my goodness.
And, you know, we're really focused on what can we learn this time that we don't know yet. And, you know, one of those things is our ability to book players really quickly, because we want to grab whoever loses in the Final Four. We want to grab some of those players and put them in the room for the finals to watch the teams that beat them. You know, because who better? Like, who's right, more expert on what we're seeing? Right.
Who's going to have more commentary against that?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So let's talk more about Hang.
Happy to.
I have actually done a hang.
You've hanged.
I've hanged.
Wow.
I did the
Thank
Super
you.
Bowl hang last year, not this past year.
Oh, wow. That was one of our first.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was our second hang. The first one was with Eli Manning.
Okay, yes, not with Eli.
And I think he took a certain idea from that and ran with it. But that's okay, because it's good for us that the Manning cast exists, because it immediately mainstreamed the idea of alternative ways of watching sports. And it proved that fans want more authentic access to the athletes. They want to peek behind the curtain now. That really works. And so it's really helped us. It's made athletes and their agents clamor to get into our hangs and be part of them. This year's Super Bowl event was a live in-person party at a mansion in Beverly Hills where we had 16 current NFL players all together watching the game, along with 70 invited guests who were partying with them. So, you know, we think of Hang as a community of athletes, celebrities, and their fans. And that community can be expressed virtually in our Hang rooms, our virtual, basically Zoom rooms, you know, where the game is on your TV.
Right.
And you're all just in this room together watching alongside people you never dreamed in a million years you would get to talk to, or who would say your name. So that's one way that you can, you know, join the community. Another way is these in-person events that we're going to be staging more of. And then the third way is through the NFT drops that we're doing that let you stay in touch with the community in between games and collect up badges of your participation. You can unlock utility, like you'll be able to attend the next in-person event through your NFT. So that's how you'll get to show up and actually shoot hoops with Trayvon Diggs, as I did at the Super Bowl party. So that, yeah,
that was pretty cool.
It was brave of me too. Yeah, but you always want to be pushing the envelope. Yeah, you know, in a startup, and so that's what we're in the middle of doing.
So pivoting from being mostly virtual to doing in person as well. Was that always part of your plan?
Yes,
or?
We just didn't know when, and it just hit us that
pandemic too. So
yeah,
who knew when?
That's right. It's true, and we've actually felt that, like, okay, everybody's feeling like getting together in person now, so maybe this is a good time to do this. And you had all the athletes in LA for the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And a lot of them sell their tickets.
Yes.
And so they really didn't have a place to watch the game. So I thought, well, watch with us.
Yeah.
Come to our place.
Yeah.
It wasn't our place. We rented it, but still, it was it was really fun. It was great until the Wings truck broke down right in the middle of the street as it was turning into our driveway. And so it was completely perpendicular to and it was a main street, Coldwater Canyon. And we had not only cops come and kick out our valet parking guys, but we had no food.
Right.
So
and no wings on Super Bowl Sundays is a travesty in
and
itself.
I had, 85, 90 people coming. And so I was talking to one of the founders of Cameo was at our party, and I'm talking to him while I am ordering Grubhub on my phone, and I congratulated him on their success. I said, you know, you're where you are, and we are at the stage where the CEO is ordering Grubhub. So that's about the difference in stage, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just got to see that point on the horizon that you're aiming at. Yeah.
Well, we're going to take a quick break, but we'll be back. We're back with Jon Klein of Hang, and we are learning more about his amazing career and what he's doing at Hang now. And one of the things that I'd love to talk to you about, knowing that you've been part of bigger companies and also a variety of startups that you have started, what has been one of the biggest gambles that you've taken that paid off better than you thought it was going to?
Can I talk about a gamble that I didn't take that I should have?
So that was that's going to be my next question.
Oh, okay. Because I don't know if I can name...
I mean, it sounds like you've done a lot of cool things and you've taken these gambles that have worked out.
Yeah, one that leaps to mind just because the stakes were pretty high was, because at a startup, you're always gambling.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's no one thing that's going to make or break your company. I mean, there are things you could do that could make your company, but not too many of them are going to break you. But at CNN, we wanted, I was there from 2004 till 2010. And a year or two into that period, social media really had taken off. And Facebook was starting to gather momentum, and Twitter was starting to, and YouTube had really caught on. And we were afraid that we were going to lose audience to those places because, you know, YouTube could start posting news video, and what if everybody started watching their news that way? And we wanted to expose our brand to those people. So we approached we approached Google about partnering with YouTube on a presidential election debate. Because one of the things you want to think about when you're innovating is not making some radical swerve or something, but rather building on and improving something you're already doing. So we knew in the 2008 election cycle, the one where Obama got elected, we knew that there was no incumbent president or vice president running for president for the first time in 50-something years, which meant that the vibe of the election was going to be wide open, freewheeling, independent-minded, and we wanted our coverage to tap into that. And we thought, well, then we'll have permission kind of to do something crazy. What if we had this debate, because we knew we were going to be doing debates, what if we staged a debate where the viewers could ask the questions of the candidates instead of Wolf Blitzer and a panel of, you know, reporters? And we partnered with YouTube to allow viewers to post their questions, and there were thousands of them, and then we went through them all and we selected a group of questions, and it was the first ever YouTube CNN presidential debate. Wow. And it was a gamble because if it had gone wrong, there would have been massive egg on our face. We would have looked like idiots in a high stakes environment where you're getting a lot of attention paid. You know, the media coverage of the cable networks, at least when you're inside one of those networks, feels very intense. And even though the public probably doesn't read too much, if any of it, when you're in there, you feel like, you know, the missiles are coming down on your head. So it was risky in that way, and it was risky because of the how this looked to my colleagues. You know, I had one close colleague say to me, well, how much are we charging YouTube for this free exposure on CNN? And I said, well, you know, we get like 3 million viewers on an amazing night. Like if we're lucky, we'll have 3 million people watching. They have 400 million users at that time. That's how many they had. They now have billions, right? So I think the question is, how much are they charging us, right? So I think we just let that question lie. Right. But there was that sort of attitude of like, oh, let's watch Jon, you know, fall on his face. And also my own people who worked with me, you know, my team needed to see that they should try. You know, that when you stretch a little bit, there's a payoff. Well, it came off really well, and the public opinion around it was fantastic, and it kind of pushed us into hyperspeed in terms of the image of CNN at the time. It was right around the time of Anderson Cooper covering Katrina and really landing in the public's consciousness, and Sanjay Gupta was emerging as a big star, and Fareed Zakaria, and you know, it just all added up to a really good tailwind for us that pushed us past Fox in the ratings in 2008 during that election coverage cycle, which was part of our 4-year plan. And you know, when we put that plan out in 2005, and it was called 4 Years to Victory, my colleagues did what you're doing right now. It's like, yeah, okay, funny, victory. Nobody has said the word victory around here. And you know, like, come on, Jon, like improvement is good. Like, how about 4 years to improvement? It's like, no, first of all, 4 years to modest improvement is not like a rallying cry.
Yeah, no, it doesn't sound as
it's not going to fire up the troops.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, why not victory? Somebody has to win. Yeah. Why can't it be us? You know? So you mean the only way we could win was if we were a monopoly? No. You know, we actually, you know, when you looked, we had more viewers at that time than we had when we were a monopoly, because competition brings more people into the market. Right. And we were holding our own, but let's win. And so we did. So that was a gamble I took that, I bit my lip a little bit, but we had such a great political team. And they were there before I got there. They just weren't asked to be as great as I knew they could be. So they created the Situation Room. When I got there, we canceled Crossfire. We canceled a bunch of other political programming in the middle of the day, institutions, shows that had been on forever, just because at a big company, you've got to institutionalize change. That is, you can't just tell people, hey, everybody, let's innovate.
Right.
You have to, okay, what do? They put on shows. Okay, let's create a hole that forces them to put on a new kind of show. And that's what we did. Suddenly we had a hole in the schedule and they had to fill it. And after my first interview for the CNN job, where I went in skeptical because I was running my startup and, but the more I talked to them, the more interesting it got. On the subway back down to my office, as my mind was racing, I just jotted down 2 words on a piece of paper. And they were Situation Room. And I thought, see, CNN's big, and they should be doing big things and audacious things, and they should have swagger. And only CNN could pull off a show that was called the Situation Room, the implication being we're pulling in inputs from everywhere around the world and making sense of it all for you. Fox couldn't do that. They didn't have the personnel. MSNBC had nowhere near the staff we did. We had everybody all over the world. Let's put them to use. And so, all I did was give my guys. David Borman was the Washington bureau chief. Sam Feist was the head of politics at the time. He's now the Washington bureau chief. And I just said, here, see what you can do with this Situation Room. And they came up with an amazing idea.
Yeah. So how do you get teams, it sounds like people were already in place, but they weren't necessarily pushed to innovate on their own. How do you change the culture at some place so big to push people to do different things, to take those chances and take risks?
Culture at a big organization starts at the top, and I think that's true also of a tiny organization like Hang.
Yeah.
The person at the top has to authentically embrace whatever the message is. It could be diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's really important, that there's buy-in at the top. It could be winning instead of just getting by. Whatever
just victory
it is, yeah, that's right. Whatever the goal is or whatever the culture is that you're looking for, you've got to walk that walk from the very top. And then reinforce it continually, not just with words, but with action. So you want to create operating goals for the organization that speak to what you want to do, that institutionalize that innovation that you want. So, for example, at CNN, we made my first year there, one of our 4 operating goals was create digital extensions of our TV product. Because it was 2004, and this internet thing seemed like it was here to stay, yet the TV people had nothing to do with the CNN.com product. And CNN.com actually was attracting 18 to 34-year-olds, and CNN TV was attracting 62-plus-year-olds.
Oh.
And so we wanted to kind of change that.
Yeah, right.
And so we made it one of our operating goals, and then we bonused people, and that's the other way that you change the culture. You articulate it, you walk the walk, and then you compensate accordingly. And so part of everybody's bonus had to incorporate a digital extension something. And, you work out those goals with them so that there's buy-in. So I sat down with my direct reports, and it's like, here are the 4 goals. We want to win at 10 o'clock. We want to get a 30 share in the morning. We want to dominate political coverage, and we want to create digital extensions. Those were the 4 goals. You could wake up. I talked about them so much that you could...
You can still recite them.
Yes. And you could wake up any CNN employee in 2006 in the middle of the night and ask them what the operating goals were, and they could tell you that, because we just nonstop, that was the mantra. And guess what? In 2008, we won at 10 o'clock, and we won the Emmy for best political coverage. And we created blogs and online video franchises that exist to this day. And we created CNN Heroes as part of that because that was an online and television collaboration. Nominate your hero online, watch them win on TV. And so without articulating the goals, you're never going to achieve the goals. And without linking rewards to those goals, people aren't going to do them. So, you know, it sounds simple, and it kind of was. The cream will rise to the top. The best people will embrace it and nail it. And the others, it's going to always be a bell curve, you know, and you need the people in the middle just to kind of do the work and get it going. But you don't need the caboose. And so lose the caboose, bring in fresh blood, and see how the curve changes, you know, because there was no shortage of talented, hungry young people who wanted to come work at CNN. And I wanted to make sure that they found that to be a place that was vibrant, alive, somewhere they could grow and do amazing things.
Yeah, very cool.
That's what we did. But you can only do it through the people, you know? I mean, you can't wave your magic wand and say, well, I'm here now, so it's all going to be great. It's not that.
No, it's definitely not. So I want to pivot a little bit and talk about a gamble that you might not have taken, or one that you did take that didn't quite turn out the way you wanted and ended up being a learning opportunity.
So I was running, the Feed Room was the streaming platform that I had founded in 1998. And, you know, we raised tens of millions of dollars, like $40-50 million. And then it was an ad-supported idea. So you click and watch the video, a pre-roll ad plays. And then a recession hit, the NASDAQ collapsed, the bubble burst, and we weren't getting any revenue, and we had to pivot a few times, and we tried different things, and we got a good business going building broadband websites for, video-based websites for big corporations, like GM and Cisco and ExxonMobil and stuff like that. And they would just pay us monthly to operate these things, fine. But I was always, as the CEO, you have to be the person looking around the corner. Where are things going to be 8 months from now, 12 months from now, 2 years from now? And I had great operators working with me who could just keep the company moving forward as it was. And one of the things that I came across, and this is in the subject of gambles I didn't take. So it was 2003, and I'm busy looking around the corner at like what's the next thing? And one of the things that jumped out was that in South Korea, which had the highest rate of broadband penetration in the world at the time, much higher than the US, user-generated video was beginning to become a thing. People would start uploading their own video. And I thought, well, that's interesting. You know, the way that the Feed Room was set up, you came to our site and we had different categories of news video. It was all news from around the country, and we separated it into different categories, and you could click on whatever story you wanted, and that was fine. And I said to our guys, to my two cronies, you know, hey guys, user-generated. And they looked at me and they said, John, enough already with we're trying this and we're trying that. Let's just get really good at this, building corporate broadband sites. And let's not bother with, they actually sat me down in the conference room and admonished me. And I thought, all right, look, these guys are very smart and they're very good at what they do. And one of the things that I learned in a big way with my first venture-backed startup, the Feed Room, was that I'm not always right. And because you can't launch a startup and know the engineering and the marketing, you know, and the business analytics of it all, as well as the content and the fundraising. You just can't. And it was immediately humbling to me because I would have this idea, I would draw it on a paper, and I would say, like, I want the video player to be this big. And the engineers would look at me and go, that can't be done. Now, I did have the dumbness part was, I'm sure it can be done. Just figure out how to do that, okay?
Right.
I can't tell you how to do it, but I know. And then they delivered it. And we had the biggest big screen, you know, and that made me feel even more dependent on them. Because if they had come back and said we couldn't do it, then we were screwed.
Right.
So when my guys sit me down and say, John, enough already.
This is not a thing.
I said, okay, we're not going to look into user-generated video. And of course, 1 year later, YouTube started doing that. And the mistake was not simply not doing it. It was not trying in a small way. What I should have said is, okay, I hear you. We're not going to pivot the whole company around this, but if we've got, picture like a Jeopardy board is what it looked like.
Yeah.
You know, if we took one of those categories and made it be your video,
Right.
let's just see what happens.
Right.
You know? And I didn't do that. And that was a lesson learned. The people who work with me at Hang now will tell you, like, I'm all about, we're trying it. We're going to try it on a small scale and then see how it grows. So that was a gamble I did not take.
That's really interesting.
And I should have.
Because it seems like that's really what's running the world right now is user-generated
Pretty much.
content.
Like so we were right about streaming.
Yeah.
You know, streaming was going to take off. And we were wrong about the path that the world would take to get there. And, you know, you do want to be right about the general space. But you also have to try a lot of things because no one knows what the path is going to be.
Right.
And now with the advent of 5G and therefore augmented reality and virtual reality, Web3, the metaverse, all of that stuff, no one knows.
Right.
No one what the paths are going to be. They know what the outcome might be, but they don't know how we're going to get there. And so you really want to be surrounded by other smart, visionary people who are also pragmatic and roll up their sleeves and test.
Yeah.
Test it,
Test and
measure
scale.
it, grow it, right? My friend of mine, Danny Warshay, just wrote a great book called See, Solve, Scale. And it's that. It's like, see what your problem is, solve it. It could take a lot of different attempts to solve it and then scale it up once you've kind of landed. And that's what you have to do.
I might have to read that book.
Yeah, it's so good. It's really good. See, solve, scale.
I will.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to take another quick break, but we'll be back in just a few moments with Jon Klein. Hi, we're back on The Business Of with Jon Klein. And so I want to dive a little bit deeper into Hang. So tell me more about your co-founder, because we haven't talked about them yet.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy named Lorne Green, which
Okay.
was the same name as the star of Bonanza, but he's not the star of Bonanza. He's his own person. But he runs a company, production company called Viva Creative in Washington, and they produce these massive streaming events like Oprah's weekly show on Apple TV Plus, which is beautifully done. You would think she was in the room with 100 black fathers, but they're all over the world. And Viva does that. They do the G20 Summit. They do the APAC conference, which is coming up this week.
Wow.
So they do these massive, can't fail scaling extravaganzas. And Lauren and I worked together on a 24-hour streaming event during the advent of COVID called The Call to Unite. And it featured Oprah as the host and 200 of the world's leading spiritual and inspirational figures. And my friend Tim Shriver, who runs the Special Olympics, had asked me to put this together. He said, you know, would it be possible to do a 24-hour global streaming thing? And I said, sure, like if you could find the people to stuff in there, like the technology allows it,
Right.
so sure.
We just need the talent.
And somebody told me about Lauren's company, and they were amazing, and I loved him. He's just a good, like, ethical person who's got a really competent group of people working with him. And so then we just started riffing about what else could we do together after we pulled off this 24-hour amazing event that was so inspiring and exhausting. And I mean, I was up for 40 hours or something like that.
I was going to say, you probably weren't up for just the 24.
I don't know how I did that. But so we both love sports, and we came up with this notion that, well, we all are missing going to the game. Let's
Yeah.
bring the game to us, and let's make it even better, because streaming allows you to, you know, it collapses physical distance. And so it means you could watch games with your heroes. And we tried one with Eli Manning, and I'm a lifelong Giant fan. And the Giant game was on TV, and Eli Manning pops up on my phone. And it was like, this is a dream come true. I became instantly a 12-year-old. You know, I was giddy. My wife and my kids were looking at me like, Dad, act your age. But like, you can't help it. And that's what happens. Like, you're in the room with, you know, Deion Sanders has done this, Deebo Samuel, Odell Beckham Jr., you know, the biggest stars, JB Smoove. We did, I mean, he's fantastic. We did a HBCU Celebration Bowl is the bowl game for HBCUs.
Okay.
And he went to Norfolk State in HBCU, and Anthony Anderson currently goes to Howard. And so Anthony and his son goes there. So he wanted to get his degree with his son.
Cool.
So we had Anthony and his son, plus Shannon Sharp, who went to an HBCU, plus Doug Williams, who went to Grambling and was the Super Bowl MVP, first black quarterback to win that. And they got to talking. First of all, it was just such a rush and so fun because we also had current players for these HBCUs because of the NIL rules. We now integrate current college players, and the vibe between the pros who've made it and the kids who are on the verge of getting drafted is phenomenal. They give advice to the youngsters, and the kids ask these great questions, and they all got to talking about the HBCU experience and what it meant to them, and it was really profound. I mean, they must have gone on for 10 minutes, and there was a guy, just a fan who had joined the chat, who was a former NFL player, Hugh Douglas, who went to play for the Eagles, in fact, went to an HBCU also, and they all knew him. It was like, Hugh Douglas, oh my God. And so you had this wonderful kind of genuine coming together, and we've seen that over and over in our hangs, where you have players. We had a guy, John Abraham, who was a linebacker for the Jets and the Falcons, and he's this massive guy, and he says in the room, now, you know, there's 100 people in the room with him, and there's thousands watching the live stream on Twitch and Discord and Facebook Live. And he says, you know, I was really nervous coming here because I'm at a clinic for social anxiety. And it's an issue for me. And I was nervous just to be around some of these other players who are so good. And, you know, and people in our audience spoke up because you're in a chat room, so you can have this conversation. This woman said, I've dealt with that myself. Have you tried this or that? Or, you know, have you thought about that? And it became a whole conversation. And you're just not going to see that kind of honest, authentic interaction on SportsCenter, you know, where everybody's fronting and it's all, you know, the show and display and everything. And you're not going to see it in a Cameo. I mean, as much as I think Cameo is really cool and I love, you know, giving them as gifts and all, but they're usually canned and they're not really that personal. And
it's not as authentic.
Yeah. And so you're just getting a different kind of experience. And it's refreshing, and it's also timely. It's what people want. I think, you know, as you think about where is media going, it's going to a place where the audience is part of the content. You know, that's what TikTok is, you know, so they're already there, you know, in the sense of, right, the audience expects to be in it. Fortnite, you know, you're in the content, you're part of it. You
Metaverse,
know?
you're
That's
in
it. That's the idea. And so sports media is going through a profound change. For that reason, younger people just don't like to sit and watch a game. I have a 21-year-old son who's a sports fanatic, and I hate watching sports with him because he doesn't watch the game. The game is the excuse for socializing in the way of, like, you know, he's texting his friends, they're watching highlights together, they're tracking their fantasy, he's tracking his bets, he's, you know, it's all of that. The game is just the excuse. And sure enough, hangs become very much like that. They're like a Super Bowl party where the game is the excuse for showing up. But once you get there, it's like, hey, Hillary, look at you. Look, it's great to see you. Hey, Frank, man, you know, and now you're talking about, and you're barely paying attention to the game. And that's what happens with us. And then from time to time, when something big happens, everybody stops and we discuss it. And the players who've been there, you know, have a lot to say about those things. So you get both the insight and the fun of it. And the other thing that happens is the players lose the persona and they just become themselves, because sports brings out the emotion and the real you. It strips away the artifice and it brings us all together. You know, we're living in a time where there's a lot of stuff pulling us apart. And for 2-3 hours, you can just sort of check your opinions and who you voted for or who you're going to vote for at the door and just all cheer for one side or the other. And that's pretty good, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, and that's kind of the unexpected. It wasn't the reason that we did this, but it's been a really happy outcome that we want to double down on. You know, if people can come together around the idea of like, you know, yeah, I can help you overcome your social anxiety.
Right.
Or, yeah, it was amazing to attend a historically black college or university. You know, that's just really cool. And those conversations need to be had. And Hang turns out to be a place to have them.
That's awesome. I mean, it's amazing that you've been able to create such a community. And I think that that's what really people are looking for is community and connection. And it's what social media has been sold to us as doing. And it does that in some ways, but it also tears us apart in a lot of ways because you get put into this silo where you're only hearing or seeing what you are putting out there. So it's great that you get to come into a room where you have something in common with people.
Yeah. But
not everything.
Yes, it's like we've taken the deck and shuffled it.
Yeah.
And like, oh, look at this. This is fun. I like these people. I like, you know, and the responses that we get from folks, we get a lot of return visitors who just, you know, we start seeing names, you know, pop up. And it's like, wait, Robert Bennett is going to be back. Okay, that's so cool. And now we're gearing up for the Final Four.
Yeah.
And that's going to be really cool. Current players. So we have Jared Butler, you know, who was most outstanding player, Corey Kispert, and then current NBA players who played for the teams that are in the finals. So we've teed up a bunch of guys.
Nice.
And if their school gets in, they're going to be in the room as well. Plus, we're going to get the players who lost out in the earlier rounds. We're going hard after the St. Peter's guys, no matter how far they get, because they're just
it's
amazing.
Such a great story.
Oh my God! Like
it's
you can't
so
help
awesome.
it. Yeah. So we want to get them and the coach, you know, Shaheen Holloway, and just, you know, so that'll be really fun. And then we're looking ahead to the Liga MX, Mexican Soccer League Championship is in May. We're going to do that. And we've got the Indy 500 we're going to do. We're dropping a big NFT in partnership with a company called Orange Comet, which dropped the Walking Dead NFTs a couple weeks ago. And they do amazing stuff. So we're working with them on that. And then the NBA Finals come up, and Stanley Cup, and FIFA World Cup, and Cricket World Cup, and Rugby World Cup, and the NFL's back. And, you know, ultimately, you know, we like to say we're going to do every game, every sport, everywhere. That's where this goes.
Yeah.
And you're not limited to sports either, because you could imagine watching your favorite reality show. I mean, picture watching The Bachelor finale with past winners and losers.
Well, they kind of do that in a smaller way.
But you can't be there.
But you can't be there.
Yeah, you can watch them.
Right.
But the whole idea
But that to be part of it would be amazing.
Yes.
Or watch the Real Housewives with the Real Housewives.
So we had a Real Housewife at our Super Bowl party, and she pitched me on that idea.
Yeah.
She said, could we do like a, you know, I was like, okay, Vicky. Yes, we can.
Oh.
Vicky.
Gundelson?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, don't
wow,
worry.
look
I
at
know.
you.
Oh, yes.
You are
She was the OG from
yes,
the OC.
Yes. So, yeah, she's my new bestie. So we're going to do that. So, yeah, so there's no limit to any of this, and that's what makes it fun.
That sounds like an awesome idea and a really fun company to be a part of.
Thank you. We're having a great time.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the time today.
Thanks for having me.
A really great time listening and learning from a lot of the advice and some of the interesting innovations you've done over the past few years. Maybe a little bit more than a few, but, you know, in your career.
They fly by. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.